Imagine waking up on an ordinary Monday. The sun rises, traffic hums, phones buzz, but something feels wrong. You open your banking app, and it won't load. You try again. Nothing. The nearby ATM flashes an out-of-service notice. Inside a store, the clerk says the card system is down. You check the news and see the headline. Major banks temporarily suspend operations. At first, most people assume it's a glitch, a software failure, maybe a cyber attack. But as hours stretch into days, a quiet realization spreads. The lifeblood of modern civilization has stopped flowing. Trust in the banking system is frozen. We tend to believe money runs the world, but money is only the language. Trust is the engine. And when trust disappears, even briefly, everything that seems solid begins to dissolve. Stay with me, because this isn't just about panic or finance. It's about how fragile our daily reality truly is. When people imagine financial collapse, they picture riots, looting, and chaos. But the first hours of a banking shutdown would look different. They would look like confusion. Life would continue on habit alone. People would keep swiping cards, retrying transfers, refreshing apps, expecting the system to recover. But as failure follows failure, panic would spread quietly. Because what most people don't realize is that your money doesn't exist in the bank the way you think it does. When you deposit $1, the bank doesn't store it for you. It lends it out, multiplies it, reinvests it, and promises it will be there if you ask. That promise works only until everyone asks at once. This is the foundation of modern banking. Fractional reserves built on confidence. An elegant illusion where 100 people believe they own the same dollar. And it works perfectly. Until it doesn't. Now, imagine that illusion cracking overnight. Commerce stalls. Payroll freezes. Supermarkets stop taking cards. Rideshare apps can't process payments. Rent can't transfer. Businesses can't pay suppliers. Governments struggle to issue salaries. In a digital economy, almost no one holds physical cash anymore. Less than 10% of currency exists as cash. More than 90% lives as data inside banking systems. When banks go dark, that digital world disappears. Even if the shutdown lasts only days, the effects run deep. Food supply chains slow. Power systems strain. Medical services falter. Everything that depends on constant payment flow begins to seize. And the shock doesn't stop at borders. In the 21st century, every economy is connected. History has seen bank failures before, but never on a fully global digital scale. In 1933, during the Great Depression, thousands of banks failed as people lined up to withdraw savings. Franklin Roosevelt declared a bank holiday, shutting the system to stop panic. For days, Americans couldn't access money, but cash still existed in homes and wallets. Commerce slowed, but it survived. In 2008, we came close again. When Lehman Brothers collapsed, the global system nearly followed. Central banks injected trillions to keep it alive. They called it liquidity. It was confidence created by printing. Those were warnings. Today's system is more fragile. There is no gold standard, no physical anchor. Everything is numbers on screens and trust in code. If that trust breaks, even briefly, the first domino will be panic withdrawals. And what follows may not be so easy to contain. ATMs would be empty within hours. Stores that rely entirely on digital payments would turn customers away. Gas stations would shut down because fuel suppliers couldn't settle transactions. Within a single day, logistics networks from trucking to shipping would grind to a halt. Long lines would form at grocery stores, not because food vanished, but because no one could pay. Panic would move from screens into the physical world. People would hoard, barter, and suddenly cash, that forgotten relic, would become more valuable than anything else. Governments would appear on television, assuring the public that systems were being restored. They would promise deposits were safe. They would insist the disruption was temporary. But every crisis in history begins with those same words. To understand what follows, we have to understand financial fear. In every monetary collapse, from Weimar Germany to Lebanon to Argentina, the pattern repeats. First disbelief, then anger, Then desperation. In Lebanon in 2019, banks froze accounts overnight. People woke up to find a lifetime of savings reduced to numbers they could no longer touch. Withdrawals were capped. Accounts were locked. The currency collapsed by more than 90%. Doctors, engineers, teachers were reduced to pleading for access to their own money. And remember, Lebanon's banking system was once called the Switzerland of the Middle East. Trust made it wealthy. The loss of trust destroyed it. Now imagine that scenario, not in one nation, but everywhere at once. What makes such a collapse catastrophic today isn't only financial, it's psychological. Modern money isn't metal or paper, it's belief. A shared agreement that digits equal value, that promises will be honored. The moment that shared belief cracks, civilization trembles. Look back at the 2008 crash. Millions lost homes, jobs, and hope. That wasn't just economics, it was collective trauma. Now multiply that by a world where every transaction, groceries, rent, medical care, depends on servers that suddenly fall silent. People wouldn't only lose savings, they'd lose the sense of stability that holds society together. Governments would respond quickly. Emergency orders, bank holidays, possibly even military enforcement to contain unrest. Central banks would flood the system with liquidity, printing money without backing to restart the flow. But that cure carries its own poison. Inflation. Printing confidence is like trying to cool a fire with fuel. You cannot manufacture trust with paper. Yet that is exactly what would happen. Digital balances would be guaranteed. Debts suspended. And central banks might seize the moment to introduce central bank digital currencies. State-controlled digital cash. They would call it progress. In reality, it would be consolidation. A banking shutdown would justify a new layer of control. Programmable money. Fully traceable transactions. The quiet end of financial privacy. History shows the pattern clearly. Every crisis becomes a gateway to centralization. After 2008, banks grew larger. After the pandemic, governments gained sweeping control over movement and spending. After a global banking shutdown, the next step would be total digital oversight. A system where every dollar, every rupee, every euro can be frozen or erased instantly. The end of banks might not bring freedom. It could mark the birth of a new financial empire. Invisible, algorithmic, absolute. Yet, even in that darkness, something else would emerge. Because when institutions fail, people search for alternatives. Gold, crypto, barter, local trade. Just as Rome's collapse birthed local economies, and Argentina's inflation created street-level markets. When official trust breaks, human trust returns. The black market becomes the real market. If banks shut down tomorrow, it wouldn't only end transactions. It would shatter assumptions. You would realize how little you truly own. Your car, your home, your account balance. All of it exists only because a digital system recognizes your name. Without those records, ownership fades. Stock markets would disappear almost instantly. Cryptocurrencies would surge briefly, then collapse as exchanges tied to banking rails went dark. Gold would become invaluable, yet almost impossible to trade for paper. Panic would shift into improvisation. Local shops would turn to barter. Farmers would exchange food for fuel. Communities would revive ancient systems of exchange built on trust, labor, and reputation. It sounds bleak, yet strangely revealing. Beneath the illusion of modern finance, humanity has always depended on one thing: relationships. There is comfort in that realization. History shows collapses erase systems, not people. Rome collapsed, but life went on. The Byzantine gold coin vanished. Yet trade survived. The Great Depression destroyed banks, but communities endured through cooperation and mutual trust. If banks shut down tomorrow, there would be pain, confusion, and loss. But there would also be adaptation. People would rebuild trust in smaller circles: families, neighbors, local networks. When institutions fail, humans themselves become the currency again. Still, the question remains: could this really happen? Not only could it, it almost has. Several times already. In 2023, regional American banks like Silicon Valley Bank collapsed within hours. triggered not by crowds at branches, but by panic spreading online. Billions were withdrawn digitally faster than regulators could respond. The system revealed how fragile it truly was. What if next time the panic doesn't stop? What if a cyber attack, geopolitical conflict, or technical failure freezes the entire network? In 2021, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp went offline for just hours, and billions felt disconnected. Now, imagine that outage, not in social media, but in money itself. That is not fantasy. It is a single point of failure waiting to be tested. There is another layer most people overlook. Banks are not merely vaults. They are the nervous system of nations. Governments rely on them to issue debt, pay workers, and fund defense. When banks freeze, the state freezes with them. In that sense, banking shutdowns are not only economic crises. They are political earthquakes. The Great Depression fueled fascism. Hyperinflation in Weimar opened the door to extremism. Financial collapse does more than empty wallets. It reshapes power. Whoever restores order after chaos becomes the new ruler. That is the most dangerous truth of all. Because the day banks shut down, the race to rebuild begins. And whoever controls the rebuild controls the future. So what might that future look like? It would begin in fear, but end in transformation. Governments would push for unified digital currency systems. One account per citizen, managed directly by central banks. No intermediaries. No commercial banks. No privacy. It would be marketed as safety. No bank runs. No collapses. But beneath stability lies control. Every transaction could be tracked, approved, or denied. Convenience would replace freedom. Money would complete its evolution from gold to paper to code, from personal ownership to institutional authority. And yet, another outcome is possible, a quieter one. After watching the illusion shatter, people might begin questioning the system itself. Because collapse is not only destruction, it is revelation. When banks shut down, we would finally see money for what it truly is. Not wealth, but belief. A story told so well that civilizations were built upon it. And when that story breaks, a new one can be written. Perhaps not centered on crypto or cash or gold, but on skills, communities, and value that cannot be printed away. The day banks shut down, the world would panic. But it might also awaken. That is the paradox of collapse. It ends one illusion and exposes a deeper truth. Every era believes its system is permanent. Rome did, Britain did, America does. History reminds us otherwise. So what happens if banks shut down tomorrow? The same thing that has happened in every age of crisis. The world ends for a moment, and then it begins again. Smaller, different, more human. Systems fall. Stories continue, because the answers are not hidden in the future. They are written in the past.